You can walk through a place and not really look at it. But if we look closely at places, they take on meaning, like battlegrounds or the North Bridge in Concord. But there are also idyllic ponds and woodlands and meadows and fields, and they all have meaning. And this is the place that inspired the literature, that inspired thousands and thousands of people around the world. It's unique because of what happened here.
I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. Henry David Thoreau.
On July 4th, 1845, Henry David Thoreau moved to the secluded shore of Walden Pond in Concord, Massachusetts. He wanted to live more simply, explore the world around him, and see what it would teach him.
He knew how to stop and pay very close and careful attention to things around him. And in so doing, he discovered a larger community that he was a part of.
Thoreau's experiences at Walden would impart to him a profound new vision of the world, which he would write into the pages of a book that would transform a small pond in Massachusetts into something extraordinary and revelatory for generations to come.
There are 1,000 other ponds and lakes like it. There's nothing magical about it. In its ordinariness is its significance.
What makes it Walden Pond is how he chose to view that lake. It was Henry's landscape, flushed with meaning, metaphor, purpose. What did he learn in the woods? What did he learn from Walden Pond? In a word, everything. How deep is Walden Pond? As deep as we are.
Walden is not a book about life in the woods. It's a book about life in the world. It transcends the present moment and reveals the deep connection between every person who has walked this earth through the ages.
As Emerson said, to believe what is true for you is true for every man. Thoreau made himself an everyman, and he made Walden Pond his everywhere. And by simply observing it and writing about it, he took an ordinary pond and he made it iconic. He made it a universal symbol.
If you could put a lens down on one spot on the map of the United States to reflect the substance and the fullness and variety that comprise the history of our country, Concord, Massachusetts is, to me, a perfect example of a good choice, because you not only have the start of the Revolution with the battles of Concord and Lexington, but you have the creative residences and workplaces of people like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Hawthorne and Henry David Thoreau.
41 years after the Declaration of Independence, Henry David Thoreau was born in 1817 in Concord, Massachusetts, the serious and inquisitive son of a local pencil maker. After receiving a degree from Harvard College, he tried his hand at many careers as a school teacher, land surveyor, and employee at his father's pencil factory. But he refused to submit to the day-to-day rigors and distractions of commerce and business, to what he called a life of quiet desperation.
The ways in which most men get their living, that is, live, are mere makeshifts and a shirking of the real business of life, chiefly because they do not know. It is not enough to be industrious. So are the ants. What are you industrious about?
he was concerned about the way that civilization was going. And he stood up in the face of the Industrial Revolution and said, wait, stop, look, listen. And most of us didn't.
It was important to him to find out why we are here on Earth and how we are supposed to live our lives to be more fulfilled.
Thoreau served as a handyman to his neighbor, the eminent writer Ralph Waldo Emerson. At Harvard, Thoreau had been influenced by Emerson's essay, Nature, which proclaimed a new, uniquely American religion, transcendentalism. God, Emerson insisted, is more likely to be found in nature than in man-made churches. That the constraints and corruptions of society are often obstacles to becoming a truly self-reliant, independent individual.
It's the ability to look within oneself for a spiritual sense of fulfillment, away in some ways from the materialist world. And we find that fulfillment through nature and through other people who share that belief, as they did. That theory is even more important now than it would have been in the 19th century.
Emerson had also introduced Thoreau to the glories of expressing oneself in words and encouraged him to write it all down. Wanting a more tranquil setting for his new work, he decided to build what he called a modest house within a sizable timber lot owned by Emerson at Walden Pond.
It's important to remember how much of one's time a writer spends thinking. He was in exactly the atmosphere that would help him to draw on his thinking as effectively as he possibly could.
The house he built was only 10 by 15 feet, no larger than he thought he would require, at the cost of $28.12.5. He furnished it only with what he said were necessary items: a bed, a table, a desk, and 3 chairs. 1 for solitude, he said, 2 for friendship, 3 for society.
Our life is frittered away by detail. Simplify. Simplify.
He teaches us today that we are too much into ourselves and into the societies we've built up. So when Thoreau said, simplify, simplify, he meant that you can go into a place in nature where you can start living again to give you a different feeling, a different set of emotions, a little relaxing of the mind. He knew nature could be extraordinarily cleansing and transformative. It brings us a little bit back to who we really are.
Every morning was a cheerful invitation to make my life of equal simplicity, and I may say innocence with nature herself. Morning is when I am awake, and there is a dawn in me.
Thoreau woke with the sun. His days included a morning bath in the often frigid pond, time for reading, writing, and quiet contemplation, hoeing his bean field, or taking a long walk through the woods, observing the details of the natural world that surrounded him.
Thoreau was very observant on his walks. He was always amazed at how detailed things were in the places that we never normally would see.
Sometimes I sat in my sunny doorway from sunrise till noon, wrapped in a reverie. Amidst the pines and hickories and sumacs, in undisturbed solitude and stillness, while the birds sing around or flitted noiseless through the house, until by the sun falling in at my west window, or the noise of some traveler's wagon on the distant highway, I was reminded of the lapse of time. Time is but the stream I go a-fishing in. I drink at it, but while I drink, I see the sandy bottom and detect how shallow it is. Its thin current slides away, but eternity remains.
Perhaps what he does better than most anybody is to not make a division between nature as something out there that we're watching, and then here we are as human beings living with one another, but rather it's a part of us in the way we deal with each other. It means that we're connected to that world around us in a much deeper way. The beauty of nature, the beauty of a mountain or the beauty of a river, he's connecting it to daily life, and that, I think, makes it much more special.
He wrote constantly in his journal about his perceptions of society, about how nature and man interact, meticulous details about the plants and insects he studied, even the weather. More than 100 years later, his observations would help scientists identify the reality of climate change.
Many of the things that Thoreau experienced, many of the things he thought about, expanded as he wrote and thought about them. He developed ideas, same as a scientist might go into a laboratory and build on the molecules and experiment. Thoreau did that with his life.
When people think of Thoreau, they mostly think of him in terms of the pond and of his writing about nature. But there was another side of him that was very much an activist for social reform, for civil rights.
In July 1846, Thoreau had an encounter that would, in time, have a profound impact on independent thinkers around the globe.
One afternoon, when I went to the village to get a shoe from the cobblers, I was seized and put into jail because I did not pay a tax to or recognize the authority of the state, which buys and sells men, women, and children like cattle at the door of its Senate House.
His night in jail would provoke him to write an essay entitled Civil Disobedience. In it, he asked a simple and direct question.
Must the citizen ever for a moment, or in the least degree, resign his conscience to the legislator? Why has every man a conscience then?
Thoreau said the reformation of the self leads to the reformation of society. I believe that. He was all about emancipation, whether it was the freeing of the slaves or the freeing of the self.
It would become a pivotal work for some of the world's greatest minds, including the novelist Leo Tolstoy in Russia, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. during the Civil Rights Movement in America, and Mahatma Gandhi in Africa and India.
My grandfather became a victim of prejudices in South Africa because of the color of his skin. He decided that this was not an injustice that he should accept. The first time Gandhi was imprisoned, somebody gave him a copy of Thoreau's Civil Disobedience. He saw that as an endorsement of what he had started in South Africa. And then it became a part of his own philosophy. That's what Thoreau and Gandhi brought to us.
Under a government which imprisons any unjustly, the true place for a just man is also a prison.
Civil disobedience can affect the course of history. Thoreau is a clear American example of how the individual can make a difference.
I left the woods for as good a reason as I went there. Perhaps it seemed to me that I had several more lives to live and could not spare any more time for that one.
Exactly 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days after he entered the woods, Henry David Thoreau left behind the solitude of Walden Pond and returned to his former life within the Concord community. He did not return to what he had called a life of quiet desperation. Thoreau continued to earn money to support himself through various jobs: pencil making, surveying, manual labor, But his true work, he insisted, is writing.
We're in the 21st century. Never have his words been more contemporary. Thoreau reminds us again and again what we may have forgotten. We are nothing without an honest embrace of the world.
More than a century and a half later, Walden has been read by millions of people all around the world, celebrated in schools and lecture halls, in the speeches of leaders, and in the words of today's writers, in print and on our screens, and where it all began, at the Walden Pond State Reservation.
Why should we live with such hurry and waste of life? What is the use of a house if you haven't got a tolerable planet to put it on?
Thoreau's basic, beautiful understanding that we need to be responsible for who we are is very powerful. We're in a very difficult position now. The planet is heating with extraordinary speed. We need to make changes in our individual lives. We need to consume less and shift some of our habits. And we need to put solar panels on our roofs. But we need that other part of Thoreau too, the political dissident, the guy who spent the night in jail. We need him helping us guide the political change that we need, because we'll only solve these problems if we shift the systems and structures that cause them.
Global conservation is not something that's going to happen by a wave of opinion by large numbers of people. It can be initiated by a single individual saying and doing the right things. And that's part of the lesson of Thoreau.
Thoreau wanted to make his life matter. And that's a very big lesson for all of us to keep in mind. To make your life matter. To walk off stage having done something that's beneficial, encouraging or stimulating or inspiring. Ideas change history. Ideas can change your own life.
I think the kids that are witnessing all of these problems across the world, on the news, on the internet, that's what's motivating kids like myself to actually find solutions. When visiting India, I could see the water crisis firsthand. I could see people who were drinking water that I wouldn't even think of touching growing up in America. And since I was exposed to this problem at an early age, I started asking these questions. Why is it that these people don't have access to clean water? And that's how I started my journey of trying to solve this world water crisis.
We encourage people to find their own Waldens. Where's your Walden? What's a place that's special to you? And how's it doing? Right in the corner where you live. You know, there is something in every town, in every county, in every state, in every country that needs attention. It all starts with one person. It's like a ripple in a pond. You throw a pebble in the pond and the ripples go out, and they keep going.
Why, here is Walden, the same woodland lake that I discovered so many years ago. Each town should have a park, or rather, a primitive forest of 500 or 1,000 acres. A common possession forever, for instruction and recreation. We can never have enough of nature. We need the tonic of wildness. In wildness is the preservation of the world.